I was born in Lee County, and when I was 5 years old, I moved into the big city of Bishopville, and we moved to help take care of one of my great aunts, whose husband had been the first superintendent of education of Lee County. So he was deceased, and my family went to help take care of him. And my mother went to work in a boutique that she worked in for the better part of 62 years. My dad died when I was a senior in high school, and she remarried a couple of times after that. But she lived in Birmingham and still would come home to spend time during the holidays to help in the store. So for 62 years she worked. I did not meet Dick until after high school. He grew up in the country, in a big city of Cassett, which consists of a railroad track and 3 stores and a Baptist church and a little tiny post office, which my cousin managed until just recently she retired. So we met on a Sunday afternoon and began dating, and I went to Limestone and he went to Wingate College, so I didn't see him very much for a long time, and we just kept running into each other and dating a little bit from time to time. And he bought a small business down in North Myrtle Beach. I think the way he actually bought the business was he was working with Bow Waters and he fractured his ankle. So he came to the beach, and his brother was a lifeguard, and so he met Mr. Blankenship, who worked with Rush Realty. So he bought the small real estate business, and Mr. Blankenship, who ran the Pad, which most people know, that was a very well-known place in Ocean Drive, he said, "Dick, I've been working here for 15 years, and I want you to know I go with it. I go with the business." So Dick said, "Well, that's great. I've got to go back to Clemson, so I'll go to Clemson and you run it, and I'll come back on the weekends." So I love to tell the story, which my mother said that he had bought a place at the beach and he owned 80 houses. And I said, "Oh, well, maybe that sounds good, because I always loved the beach. I spent a lot of money coming down to the beach almost every weekend in the summer." So we met again and we got married, and so we've been married now for 52 years. We've raised 3 children. And before we were married, I remember a conversation with Dick, and he said, "I would like to work until I'm 40, and hopefully at that time I can give back to society, to people, some form of service." I don't know what he had in mind or if he had anything in mind, but that was sort of the pattern that actually did happen. He served early on the city council for 1 or 2 terms, and then he was chair of OEO, which is now EOC, for probably 15 years. And then he served on county council under home rule. And I think there were 59 people running for that one seat, and there were several Elliots. So we really had to work hard to get him elected that first county council. And he served there for 4 years. And then he went to Columbia in 1982. Charles Hodges was the representative at the time, and he died, and so Dick ran and filled that seat, which he served for 10 years in the House and then 20 years in the Senate. So altogether 30 years, and his biggest claim is that he never missed a day. And last year he did get sick right at the end of the session, and they brought his computer in, and he was able to work a few days in the hospital to allow him to get his perfect attendance. And I guess one of the nicest days was when the governor of South Carolina, who being a Democrat and Nikki being a Republican, honored him with the Order of the Palmetto. So that was a real highlight for him and for our family. We're all proud of him. Since he's retired, it's been a challenge for the last year because his health hasn't been as good as it had been in the past. But he still goes to work every day and gets up quite early, and we have the Eagle Nest Golf Course, and he's there every day. And so my son laughed and said, Dad, the people I feel sorry for is the people that are going to be working with you, because you're really going to be the drill sergeant. And some days I watch him and I think, oh, maybe he is just a little bit. But I think his employees love him and respect him, and so that's good. But I think his legacy will live on. In the near future, they're doing a bust of him, which will be at Seacoast, because a lot of people didn't know how influential he was in getting Seacoast in North Myrtle Beach, because he kept talking to the people in Loris, and they kept saying, we have a hospital, we have this hospital in Loris. He says, but the beach is growing. This is where you need to come, and one day, it will help Loris quite a bit to carry the hospital on. Of course, now we've merged with McLeod, but Dick was very influential in getting the idea started to have a hospital here, and through the years, as he could, to help with funding for the hospital, I'm sure. But his legacy does live on. I was in the Aquatic Center this morning and talking to Dr. Sprouls, who was a principal at one of the schools here, and he is now retired. And after he retired, Jarita Postlewaite, who was the superintendent of education, asked him if he would go to Columbia. He said, because they felt like they needed someone up there in the interest of education. So he did go up, and he said, I spent a year up there, and during the year that I was up there, I really learned a lot about the government, but I also learned more about your husband. And he said Dick was always interested in what was going on, helped education, and you may not always agree with him, but his word was his word, and you knew that. And he was very strong in helping with education, which he's always been interested in, because our kids always went to the public schools. We did have a private school for a while, but they all went to the public schools. And Rick and David both graduated from Presbyterian College and got their masters from USC. And Angela, who came later in life, in our lives, graduated from Columbia College and got her law degree from USC, and then her master's from Clemson University. So now she's an attorney in Greenville. And David, she's married to Russell Frazier, who's an engineer with Jacobs. And Rick, our oldest son, runs the real estate business here, and he's really done a great job with it to help to make it grow. And it's given his dad an opportunity to do his first love, which was farming, and to be out at the golf course, which is similar to farming, because it takes a lot more than people realize to keep grass growing and to keep it green, and to do the things that are needed for a golf course. So he's sort of still living what he grew up with in the past by running still the golf course. And so Leslie and Rick have two little girls, Madison, and we're really proud of her because she's very good in golf. She plays in a lot of the junior golf tournaments, and she's on the high school team. And just parred, I don't know if it was 9 or 18 holes when they played a couple of weeks ago. So she's looking for a college scholarship somewhere, and Caroline is the younger sister, and she's beginning to do some golf and showing some good signs as well. And our younger son, David, lives in Marietta, Georgia. He's a golf pro. His wife's an attorney with Delta, and they have one little girl, Blair. And through the years, I've enjoyed lots of traveling, and you were asking me a few minutes ago. Yes, I've covered 7 continents. The last one was to fly over to Antarctica, and that was fun. And I did have one experience of falling out of the Zodiac, because they told us exactly how to get in, to put one leg and then bring the other leg over. Well, when the first leg went on the Zodiac, I knew I was in trouble. So I just gracefully fell in, and they gave me a certificate, and I said, "No, don't say I fell in." And so they gave me a certificate for doing the polar plunge. And when we were leaving, this guy was at the airport, and he said, I saw you fall in and I was coming in to rescue and you got out so fast. He says, but I could just kick myself for not getting in and taking a swim as well. And I said, well, I took my opportunity. I'm sorry that you missed yours. And this summer, we traveled and we took all of our kids and all of the grandkids to Alaska. I think it was my 4th time and Dick's 3rd time, but some of their first times. So that was wonderful that we could all be together as a family and spend that time together. We sort of gradually worked into to him being in politics, because it started with on the city level and the county level, which still kept him at home. And when Angela was 5 years old was when he went to Columbia, and of course Rick and David were older at that time, but they were still at home when he first went. So it was different, but it was, you know, you just still do the carpools, still take them to football practice, baseball practice, and with Angela it was dancing, and her love was dance, and she did a lot of competitions, and she was Miss Dance of South Carolina for Dance Masters one year, and so I think it really helped her so far as her poise, and as well as interviewing when she got ready to begin working with some of the law firms. But one night that I can remember is, I guess, being on the beach. We were real protective of our kids, and Rick and David both wanted a moped, and Dick said no, because they can be dangerous. And we had just had this conversation when at midnight, here comes one of their best friends coming around the cul-de-sac where we live on their mopeds. And it was, I just can remember cringing, oh, why did you have to come by right at this particular time when we had just had this conversation? So, and then neither one of the boys got cars until they were seniors in college. And I think that's probably was unusual even in that day. And then when Angie came along and she was dancing and going to Myrtle Beach for dance and coming back to classes and coming back for cheerleading, I said, you know, I'm really kind of getting tired. I spent a lot of time reading books and waiting in the car. So when she was a senior, we had a family gathering, and both the boys said that she could get a car earlier than they had gotten one. So she got a car at a senior in high school. But the boys just didn't get one until they were seniors in college. Well, there have been two, I think, major things in her life for me, and that was having Angela when I was a bit older, which is now the normal age for mothers to have children, but when I had her, I was considered an older mom, I guess. So it opened the doors to meeting younger couples, younger people that I would not have a relationship if it had not happened that she was younger. So that was good. It kept us in touch with younger people and younger couples. And I've always loved young people. Dick and I have had probably 5 exchange students in our home from Japan, 2 from Sweden, from London, England for a short period of time. And on one trip I met a girl in Austria, and she was getting ready to come to the U.S. as an au pair. And she invited me to go to her house, and I said, well, where do you live? She says, 2 minutes. So we went to their house, and it was so fascinating. They were shoe repairmen, 4th generation shoe repairmen. Her brother and sister and brother and wife and baby lived on the 2nd floor, and her mom and dad and Karen were on the 3rd and 4th floor. So she said she was coming to the U.S., and I said, well, great. I said, she's only 10 hours away. She was going to be in New Jersey, and I assured her parents, through her being the interpreter, that if she needed us, that I would be there, that we would be there for her. And we didn't have to go to her, but she did come to us and brought an au pair from London, and they stayed with us for a week. And we a friend and I just went up last month for a Russian student that we sort of mentored as her American mothers through her master's degree, and she just got her doctorate, and she just had a new baby. She got married last year on the beach here, and again in New York in the fall, because the Russians, I think, sometimes they like to have two weddings, the civil wedding and then they have the Russian Orthodox wedding in the church later, which she did, and she just had a baby, so we just went up to have the baby baptized. And I think she and her husband are coming in a couple of weeks, so they'll be probably staying here at our home. So through the years, we've just enjoyed having students come and live with us, and I think we've benefited more from them than they have from us. We have short periods of Russian students that come in the summertime, and we've had them several different times. There were a lot of late nights, I'm sure, more with I guess the guys probably have funnier stories than we do of jumping ditches, putting up signs, because out in the country, you don't do it so much in the cities, but out in the rural areas, campaign signs on the roadsides are still an important part of campaigning. So George and Rick have the stories of jumping a ditch and maybe seeing a snake, and so they would have the funniest stories. But one day, a friend and I were just trying to, Leslie, my daughter-in-law, and I were trying to put up one of Dick's campaign signs, and somebody came from Sugar Bears from the store, and he says, "Let me help you with it." But it was huge, so we were glad to receive some help from him. But and through the years, Gallivant's Ferry is always a special time. For the Democratic Party, it's been going on over 100 years, and they still have the Gallivant's Ferry stump meeting, and it began 100 or so years ago when that's when they discuss politics, is standing around a tree stump. So that's a tradition in Gallivant's Ferry, and Dick has spoken there through the years, and we always look forward to the chicken bog and the music and the campaign speeches there. And he was always supportive of education and the public schools, as well as the higher education. In fact, Mary Edie, I forget which building it was at Coastal Carolina, and they were trying to get some funding for it, and they went into the meeting, and I think it was like $10 million at the time, and somebody said, "We'll never get it," and Mary Edie says, "Dick Elliott's in that meeting, we will get the money." So Coastal Carolina got the money for one of the buildings that's existing out there today. So education, support of education, and as we talked about, support of getting the hospital Seacoast started here in North Myrtle Beach. And I think that probably there's him being somewhat of a private person about whom he's helped through the years. I keep hearing stories from other people that tell me now, and I don't think that any of us realize, even his family, some of the things that he's done. But I know that he gave it his best efforts always. There's definitely a sacrifice to it for the family. You know, they're gone a lot. It takes a lot of time. But there's certainly there have been benefits, because I have met people through the years that I would not know, that I would not have a relationship with, and the spouses of the legislature began meeting in 1975. I think Emily Theodore and Rex Carter's wife were. Rex was Speaker of the House at the time, and mostly back then, and still is true, that it was basically the males that were serving. So the females would go up for a reception, and they wouldn't know each other. So they decided, well, you know, let's start something so that we can get together. So on the fourth Wednesday of each month, it started in 1975, the spouses of the legislature, now that's men and women now, as well as some of the constitutional officers' wives or spouses, can attend these meetings, and all the proceeds of the money that we have made through selling cookbooks twice, Christmas ornaments, and note cards and other things, all the money has gone to proceeds to help the governor's mansion. And I think in the dining room there's a painting that it's in the dining room that we were able to pay for. And we bought some chandeliers or candelabras for the dining room at the governor's mansion. So that's been a positive thing of not only helping the mansion monetarily, but also just getting to having the opportunity to meet some of the other spouses. So that's been a good thing. I think the general public probably doesn't realize the amount of time that he did spend serving them in every way that he could. And when I go to Colombia and I meet people, they always say to me many times, there are a few statesmen left, and your husband is one of them. And when he gives you his word, it is his word, and you can count on it. And I think that will end up being his greatest legacy, is his honesty and his integrity, and that he truly cared about the people he served. And I don't think he looked at I don't think he looked at race. I don't think he looked at whether you were a Democrat, Republican, Independent, or whatever. You were a human being, and if he could help, he did. And that's, to me, would be one of his greatest legacies. Do I think that Dick would ever slow down? No. Not ever. He's too much involved with what's going on. And he's been away from his personal business for a long time, so I think he's kind of enjoying getting back into being more involved in his own personal business, which is a good thing, because he keeps his brain stimulated, keeps him busy, and keeps him occupied, and I don't think he'll ever quit. So for many years he used the Bradford pears, which didn't produce any fruit. Then he started doing the pear trees, which produce fruit, and I said, well, let's go to some different trees. So now we have fig trees and many different varieties that are growing. And then one day I said, we lose so many people that have meant so much to this community. So now, and I'm not sure we have them labeled yet, but as someone dies that's special, that's been a part of the community, we just plant a tree in their memory. So we started doing that at the golf course, which I think it's a good thing. I think Dick enjoyed getting on any piece of equipment, particularly a bulldozer. He really liked to operate that, or a tractor. And I guess it's still that farming that's still a part of him, but many times people will laugh because he'd come in with his suit, tuck his tie inside his shirt, and get on a piece of equipment and run it until dark, until he couldn't see anymore. So that would still be something he would love to do. Before Dick and I were married, I was working at the Highway Department, which was right across the street from the Capitol at the time. And I guess Dick, being a Democrat at the time, it was going to be my first election to be able to vote. And I said, well, I saw Nixon and I shook his hands, and I'm going to vote for him because he's going to be the president. And I think he thought I should have voted on the other side. But you know what? I've always been pretty independent, so I voted for President Nixon. And that was my first vote, and I was so proud to cast that vote. So I remember when Clinton came to the Capitol, and whether you liked his politics or not, you couldn't deny that he was pretty good looking. And so I met him and shook his hand, and that was a really nice day. So I guess I've been on both sides of politics. And now Jimmy Carter, I met him at the Dunes Club, Pine Lakes in Myrtle Beach when he came. And the first time I met him, I loved the way he gave you eye contact. And I said, Dick, that guy's going to be president. I said, because there were 500 people in that room, but when you spoke to him, it was like you were the only person in the room. And that's a gift that not everybody has, but Jimmy Carter had that gift. Well, I do golf. I have a golf foursome, and we started about probably 17 or 18 years ago. I think we've been to the Heritage almost every year since then. So we're good friends, but not very good golfers. In fact, when we play, Dick says, "You impersonate golfers." And this week, a funny story about my younger son, who's the golf pro. I said, "David, you're here on Monday, and the girls and I are playing golf. How would you like to play with us and give us a little lesson?" He says, "Mom, I think I'd rather go to the mall." And I said, "Oh, okay. Now, what guy really likes to go to the mall?" He just didn't want to play with us. I said, "Well, Dad's going fishing." So he said, "Well, I think I'll go fishing." And so Billy Witherspoon, who served in the house, and Dick and David went fishing. Well, after I finished playing golf, I drove my car up to where they were fishing. I took some pictures. They never saw me. They were so intent on fishing that I was standing near them taking pictures. They never saw me. So Dick still enjoys going fishing. Dick and Billy Witherspoon and I think Frankie Blanton were going fishing up in North Carolina. And I said, and they were just going for overnight, and I said, "Dick, you better take some extra clothes." He says, "Oh, we're just going for overnight. I won't need anything." So he left. Well, it just so happens that he was getting ready to get out of the boat, and the boat started separating from the dock, and Dick went in the water. So when I got home, he had on a pair of blue jeans. I knew they weren't his, and I said, "Oh, when did y'all find time to go shopping?" He says, "We didn't. I fell in the water." So I'm laughing, and Billy Witherspoon is horrified because he said, "I worried about him because he was freezing. I had the heat on full blast. I was burning up all the way home." And he says, "All Ann did was laugh." I said, "I laughed because I gave him warning of what might happen." And he was so sure that it wasn't going to happen to him, and yet it did. So that was pretty funny. On the travels, we started when Rick and they were babies, and after Christmas every year we always take a trip. And when the boys were growing up, it was always the bowl games. And when Angela came along, she was like 6 weeks old. She was born in October, the last of October. We went to the Gator Bowl, the Orange Bowl, and back to the Peach Bowl. So she went to 3 bowl games, and she was 6 weeks old. So she was indoctrinated into football. And Rick and David stood when she was at the nursery and said, Rick says, "She's going to be a Clemson fan." And David says, "No, she's going to be a Carolina fan." So they argued because our house is divided. Because my degree is from Coastal Carolina and USC, and Dick's is from, went to Clemson. So anyway, they were arguing at the hospital in front of her window at the nursery. But she figured it out. She decided when she was just a toddler, she would take her pom-poms and she'd say, "Go Tiger Cox, go Tiger Cox." So she included both teams.